Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's opposition party, the Congress, claims it cannot campaign because its bank accounts are frozen. The ruling BJP hits back, says the Congress is making excuses for its imminent defeat. US Secretary of State discusses Gaza truce with Egypt's president in Cairo. Israel's Prime Minister says the war against Hamas will continue. And Prabowo Subianto is declared the winner of Indonesia's presidential election. Losing candidate Anies Baswedan challenges the results in court. All right, first up, all the latest on the largest democratic exercise that is underway in India. India's Minister of State and BJP leader Jitendra Singh has filed his nomination from Udhampur constituency in Jammu and Kashmir. He filed his papers in Kathua. Jal Shakti Minister Gajendra Singh Shekhawat accompanied him. Udhampur goes to the polls in the first phase of election on 19th April. Voters and BJP workers alike turned up in numbers as the minister made his way to file his nomination papers. Earlier in the day, Minister Singh offered prayers at his residence in Jammu. Top leaders of the Congress party held a press conference in New Delhi. It included Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge, Congress Parliamentary Party Chairperson Sonia Gandhi and lawmaker Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi said that the party is facing financial constraints to run its election campaign.
We can do no campaign work. We cannot support our workers. We cannot support our candidates. Our leaders cannot fly from one part of the country to the other. Forget fly. They can't take a railway train.
The BJP mocked Congress leader Rahul Gandhi for his ignorance on tax matters. He told a press conference that India's democracy was bigger than the Congress party.
In utter desperation of imminent defeat, the Congress party at the highest level sought to create an alibi today. Congress party राजनीतिक रूप से सूख कर कांटा हो गई है. फिर भी कांग्रेस पार्टी का अकाउंट अगर फ्रीज हुआ तो देश का अकाउंट फ्रीज हुआ. Mr. Rahul Gandhi, what do you mean by this? Don't insult Indian democracy. ये देश आपकी पार्टी से बड़ा है, ये देश का लोकतंत्र आपसे बड़ा है.
Now, conducting polls in India, which has more than 968 million voters, is no mean feat. Our next report tells you more about the logistics behind holding the world's largest election.
$968 million. That's the number of registered voters in India. It is more than the combined population of the United States and the European Union. In 2024, nearly 50 countries including the US and Mexico are going to polls. More than 2 billion voters will cast their ballots and nearly half of them will be in India alone. The more you delve into numbers, you realize that conducting general elections in India is a mammoth exercise. India is the world's 7th largest country by land area, comprising 28 states and 8 union territories. The Election Commission will conduct the 2024 general elections to elect 543 lower house members in 7 phases from April 19th to June 1st. The results will be out on June 4th. Over 15 million election officials will be deployed across 1 million polling stations throughout the country. Over 5.5 million electronic voting machines will be used for the exercise. Of the total 968 million voters, 497 million are male, 471 million are female, while about 48,000 belong to the third gender. Also, nearly 18 million voters will exercise their franchise for the first time ever. Let's also take a look at the key statistics of the last Indian general elections that were held in 2019. There were over 900 million eligible voters, out of which 600 million people cast their ballots. The final turnout stood at over 67%, the highest ever for any general elections to date. Nearly 4 million electronic voting machines were deployed across 1 million polling stations, and over 8,000 candidates and 670 parties were in the fray. That's not all. The polls, which cost 600 billion rupees, are the world's second most expensive elections after the 2020 US presidential election.
Right, shifting focus to West Asia now. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken met Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry of Egypt in Cairo. Blinken also called on Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. The two leaders discussed about the negotiations for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and release of all hostages. Blinken landed in Cairo from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where on Wednesday he met his Saudi Arabian counterpart. He also called on Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The Israeli military claimed to have cornered Hamas terrorists at the Al-Shifa hospital for the fourth day. It had sent in its special forces supported by infantry and tanks based on intelligence that the hospital was again being used by Hamas. The Israeli army claims to have found Hamas's weapons, money and operatives during a raid at the hospital. The Israeli military said on Wednesday that it had killed around 90 gunmen and arrested 160 in the raid, an allegation that the Hamas denies. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday said that his country's military operation in Rafah inside Gaza will take time as preparations were underway for the invasion of the southern Gaza Strip. Netanyahu approved the Israeli military's operational plans for Rafah. He said that he will soon approve a plan for the evacuation of civilians from Rafah.
I want you to know that I've already approved the IDF's operational plan. And soon we will also approve the plan to evacuate the civilian population from the battle zones. As we are preparing to enter Rafah, and this will take a little time, we are continuing to operate with full force. We are continuing to operate in Khan Yunis, in the camps in the center, in eliminating and capturing senior Hamas officials, as we have just done in Shifa, and in eliminating hundreds of terrorists.
Netanyahu also said that Israel will continue its efforts to defeat Hamas in Gaza.
I made it supremely clear to the US President Joe Biden in our conversation that we are determined to complete the elimination of these Hamas battalions in Rafah, and there is no way to do it except by going in on the ground.
Let me now bring you up to speed on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. A Russian missile attack on Kyiv on Thursday injured at least 17 people and damaged the city's infrastructure. Both ballistic and cruise missiles were used in the attacks. Kyiv's mayor Vitaly Klitschko said that missile debris hit many residential buildings, industrial sites and a kindergarten. Ukraine's air defense commander Mykola Oleshchuk said that his forces shot down 31 Russian missiles that targeted Kyiv. Meanwhile, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said during a visit to Kyiv on Wednesday that a major U.S. aid package that has been blocked by lawmakers from the opposition Republican Party for months now will get to Ukraine, and he vowed that Washington, D.C.'s support will continue.
We have stood by your side Since this war began, we have provided enormous support, and we will continue to do so every day in every way we know how. Now, I know there are questions here because of the back and forth in our Congress in the months that have gone by without the supplemental bill coming through, the package of aid that you rightly deserve and that President Biden is fighting for every day, the $60 billion that the Senate has passed on a bipartisan basis, and now we're working with the House to pass. But from our perspective, we are confident we will get this done. We will get this aid to Ukraine.
Belgium on Thursday welcomed an EU proposal to use billions of dollars in profits from frozen Russian assets to buy arms for Ukraine. This week, the European Commission proposed taking profits estimated at 2.7 to 3.3 billion US dollars per year from Russian assets frozen in Europe.
I think it's a good proposal. And we already had taken a first step as of 2 years ago, is that the taxation incomes of the proceeds coming from the frozen assets, we never used that for our budget. We isolated it and used it 100% for buying weapons and providing humanitarian assistance to the Ukrainians. We've always been clear, this is taxation on the misery of the Ukrainians that has been inflicted to them by the Russians. The decision or the proposal on the proceeds themselves, I think it's a sensible way of doing it. I think the idea to allocate it predominantly to the purchase of weapons makes total sense.
In a related news, Russia, in cooperation with Qatar, coordinated the transfer of 6 Ukrainian children back to their country. Now, this was reported by the Russian state news agency TASS on Thursday. The children were allegedly staying with their relatives in Russia or in Russian-occupied territory and were sent back to Ukraine via Moscow. Right, moving on, leaders from pro-nuclear European countries and energy experts are seeking a nuclear energy revival at a summit in Brussels on Thursday. The political push to expand the low-carbon energy source is part of the drive to meet Europe's ambitious climate targets. Europe aims to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030. But anti-nuclear countries such as Austria and Germany want the focus to stay on renewable sources such as wind and solar energy. But pro-nuclear leaders, including International Atomic Energy Agency Chief Rafael Grossi, EU Council President Charles Michel and Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban, stressed on the global importance of nuclear energy on their way to the summit.
If we are having a summit, it's for a reason, and this is because the heads of government, presidents, they believe that in the current context, energy-wise, security-wise, nuclear has a very, very important contribution to make.
The strategic autonomy of the EU is the top priority in my opinion, and we know that the energy sector is fundamental for our future, for our ability to control our future, and it's why we know that the nuclear is one source that can help us to tackle the climate crisis on the one hand, and it can help us to build our strategic autonomy.
This is the only source of energy which could be non-dangerous for the people in terms of pollution, and at the same time produce big quantity what we need. So Hungary is very much in favor of that. Good luck.
In more news from Europe, the passage of British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's contentious bill to deport refugees to Rwanda may be delayed until at least next month. Unelected members of the House of Lords, the country's upper chamber of legislature, voted on Wednesday for a second time to amend the legislation to put more safeguards in place to protect the rights of asylum seekers. But Wednesday's decision by the lawmakers means that Mr. Sunak faces a race against time to stand by his commitment to begin the process of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda before June. Australia and the United Kingdom on Thursday signed a new defence and security cooperation agreement. The agreement aims at bolstering defence cooperation between the two countries as it eases their defence forces to operate together in each other's countries. According to the treaty, the two nations will have to consult each other if they come under threat. Australia is boosting military exercises with the US and regional partners after a defense review last year said that China is undertaking the largest military buildup of any country after the Second World War. Elon Musk's brain chip startup called Neuralink live-streamed on Wednesday its first patient implanted with a chip using his mind to play online chess. 29-year-old Noland Arbach, who was paralyzed below the shoulder after a diving accident, played chess on his laptop and moved the cursor using the Neuralink device. The implant seeks to enable people to control a computer, cursor or keyboard using only their thoughts.
The surgery was super easy. I literally was released from the hospital a day later. I have no cognitive impairments. I had basically given up on playing that game. Y'all gave me the ability to do that again, and I played it for 8 hours that day.
And still to come on DD India Live. The IMF reaches a tentative agreement with Sri Lanka for a $337 million bailout. Portugal's president names Luis Montenegro, head of the centre-right Democratic Alliance, as the country's new prime minister. And MS Dhoni steps down as the captain of Chennai Super Kings.
You said that Indian ethos and conceptualization of society, nation, state, governance, all these fundamental concepts of public life. You said that they are distinct and they are quite different and drawn from our traditions.
Our rise should be not just a photocopy of a Western or European nation, but India should rise as its own real, with its own real identity, which we call it Bharat.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. The International Monetary Fund announced an agreement with Sri Lanka regarding the country's second review of its economic reform program. The program, bolstered by a 4-year extended fund facility arrangement, garnered approval from IMF Executive Board in March 2023, securing a substantial sum of approximately $3 billion. Pending approval from IMF Management and Executive Board, this agreement hinges on a successful implementation of prior actions and progress in financing assurances review. If ratified, Sri Lanka stands to gain access to approximately $337 million, supplementing the existing financial support of $1 billion under the arrangement. The United Nations Development Programme in Sri Lanka has uncovered a troubling reality of multi-dimensional vulnerability in the northern and eastern regions of the island nation. But recent collaborations between Sri Lanka and India offer a glimmer of hope. Discussions between Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi have led to a joint vision document focusing on transforming Trincomalee into a hub for industry, energy and economic activity. Now, these ambitious plans hold the potential to uplift communities by generating employment and improving living standards. Moreover, India's ongoing projects across the island, such as hybrid renewable energy systems in various islands and initiatives in Mannar and Punerin, are already making a positive impact. Indonesia's Election Commission on Wednesday formally declared Prabowo Subianto the winner of the 14th February presidential election. Prabowo, a 3-time presidential candidate, is expected to take over from outgoing President Joko Widodo, known as Joko V, in October. The former Special Forces commander and current Defense Minister Subianto won the election with nearly 60% of votes, a resounding win over rivals Anies Baswedan and Ganjar Pranowo. Baswedan received about 25% of votes and 16% of votes went to Pranowo. Meanwhile, Indonesia's presidential candidate Anies Baswedan, who lost to Defence Minister Prabowo Subianto, filed a legal case at a constitutional court to challenge the outcome of the election. His team alleged widespread allocation of social assistance such as rice, fertilizer and cash handouts in key electoral areas, which they said influenced the vote. Official results showed Prabowo win with almost 60% of the vote, followed by Anies with 25%. DD India's Patrick Falk has more inputs from Singapore.
Well, look, the result was widely expected. Prabowo secured around 60% of the vote. He also notably won in 36 of Indonesia's 38 provinces, with rival Anies Baswedan winning in Aceh and West Sumatra. Speaking in Jakarta, Prabowo called on Indonesians to gaze into the future together. He also asked Indonesians who didn't vote for him to give him a chance. And as we've said before, this victory is very much seen as a continuation of the existing government under the leadership of Joko Widodo. Jokowi has also begun discussions over next year's state budget to pave the way for the transition of leadership. Well, the main challenge is that Prabowo only secured 43% of the national legislature, which means that he is going to have to bring on more coalition partners to gain a majority in the lower house. It does also appear as though there is going to be a challenge to the results. Anies Baswedan and Pranowo Ganja said that there were lots of election regularities, and Ganja is calling for an investigation in particular. There was, if you remember, a lot of unhappiness over Jokowi's support for Prabowo, and there were claims of the government not acting with neutrality. But the results, as we've said, do look definitive. And in any case, to move forward with any challenge, at least 2 parties and 25 lawmakers need to be in favour.
Portugal's president has named Luis Montenegro, head of the centre-right Democratic Alliance, as the country's new prime minister and invited him to form a minority government. The alliance won a parliamentary election on 10th March by a slim margin, far short of a working majority. 51-year-old Montenegro has repeatedly said that his party is prepared to govern on its own and will not negotiate with the far-right Chega party to work together. After being named premier, Montenegro said the government would be sworn in on the 2nd of April. Bangladesh's second-largest city, Chittagong, is facing a severe water crisis amid a drastic increase in the salinity of its primary water source, the Karnapuli River. People were lining up with empty buckets, pitchers and containers in the city's streets. The salinity of the Karnapuli River has increased because of rising sea levels due to climate change, rendering the water untreated and undrinkable. The crisis comes as a busy port city, home to more than 8 million people, is bracing for the increasingly intense summer heat, and much of its population is fasting during Ramzan. A United Nations report has found that the world is set to produce a staggering 82 million tons of waste made up of old mobile phones and other devices by 2030. A UN expert said the world is losing the battle against electronic waste. The generation of e-waste is rising by 2.6 million tons every year. In 2022, the world's annual output of e-waste stood at 62 million tons, which marked an 82% increase from 2010. Now, e-waste can contain toxic additives and hazardous substances which can represent an environmental and health hazard. All right, now take a look at some other stories making news in India. The Archaeological Survey of India is slated to begin the survey of the Bodhshala complex in Dhar in the central Indian state of Madhya Pradesh on Friday. The development comes after the order of the High Court in Madhya Pradesh at Indore. India's National Investigation Agency arrested an absconding accused in a conspiracy to revive and strengthen the banned CPI Maoist organization in Magad zone in the northern Indian state of Bihar. The accused is named in an FIR related to the case and has been on the run for the past 8 months. The northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh celebrated Masan Holi with great pomp at Manikarnika Ghat in Varanasi. This shade of Holi is played on the day after the Rang Bhari Ekadashi. India's top court refused to stay a new law on the appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner and election commissioners. A bench comprising Justices Sanjeev Khanna and Dipankar Datta said it cannot stay the law at this stage when the elections are on. To sports news now, IPL team Chennai Super Kings announced that MS Dhoni has stepped down as its captain. Rituraj Gaikwad has been appointed as the new captain. IPL's handle on X posted a group photo of all the captains in which Dhoni was absent, and Rituraj can be seen in the picture. Chennai Super Kings is gearing up to commence its Indian Premier League title defence against Royal Challengers Bengaluru on Friday, with all eyes on captain Mahendra Singh Dhoni amid speculation about his future in the league. Despite retiring from international cricket in 2019, Dhoni continues to be a prominent figure in Indian cricket. As CSK's captain, the 42-year-old has played a pivotal role in the team's success, including securing its 5th IPL title last season. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India Live. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.